Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 58 of the Fair Housing Insiders. We are looking forward to another fantastic edition. Today, we are talking about live-in aides and some fair housing best practices to think about in regards to that topic. So joining me today is Leslie Tucker from Williams, Edelstein and Tucker. Leslie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Jonathan. Glad to be back.
Yeah, nice to have you on the show again. So just a couple of housekeeping items. If you haven't already subscribed to us on YouTube, please do that so that you're aware of any new episodes that we publish. And also sign up for our newsletter, because not only do we let the community know about these episodes, but we always have extra fair housing information that we love to share with you. And please follow us on Instagram at Fair Housing Institute. So as we mentioned at the outset today, we're talking about live-in aides. And we've got some questions for Leslie to kind of give us a bit of an overview of like why we're talking about it and diving into that scenario. When should a tenant be approved for a live-in aide? We'll kind of kick the discussion off. So Leslie, I kick it to you. Give us an idea about live-in aides and fair housing, and when can a tenant be approved to have a live-in aide?
Yeah, so a live-in aide is necessary for a tenant who is disabled, who needs basically full-time care, so as to justify the caregiver moving in with them and living in their unit so they are available to care for this person, the disabled tenant, whenever they need that care. The reason that a live-in aide is considered to be a reasonable accommodation is because live-in aides are not considered to be, an occupant of the unit on the lease. So it's basically someone who is living in the unit who is not actually on your lease, which is, basically an exception or change to your typical policies. It's an even bigger deal in subsidized housing because in subsidized housing, obviously, every adult occupant of the unit, their income is considered in calculating the household's monthly rent. So if there's an extra person living in the unit, who is a live-in aide, their income cannot be considered when calculating monthly rent. So the process that you're following when considering those types of requests in subsidized housing is kind of even more, I don't want to say strict, but it's more important that you are thoroughly following your policies, potentially verifying those requests if needed.
All right, very good, very good. So thank you for that. So kind of a sidebar question. I know we talked about this when we were preparing for this episode. So does this, besides a couple of housing ones that you mentioned there, do you see this more in senior living housing, or does this apply to someone who may have a disability and requires a live-in aide? Or is there any like little, granular items when it comes to those types of situations?
Well, live-in aides can be requested in any type of property, any type of funding, multifamily, senior housing. Certainly you do see it more in senior housing, just because that need is greater there. It's more prevalent in senior housing, but the process that you would follow and the questions that you would potentially ask in a verification don't really change, whether you're in a multifamily housing property or senior or
Okay.
funding doesn't,
Okay.
the process doesn't change.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I think, listening to your explanation, it just kind of like dawned on me. Is this, is it very specific? So I think that's very helpful to our audience to know that, it could happen in any type of property that they may be managing. So appreciate that clarification. So let's circle back now. So we have someone who is requesting a live-in aide. They're looking for approval. What are some questions that should be asked when they're when they're, as a property manager, as a management company, when they're trying to verify those requests?
Yeah, so for live-in aids, just similar to any other type of reasonable accommodation request, you only want to verify those requests that are not already obvious. So if the disability is not obvious, or if the need for a full-time caregiver is not obvious, that's the only time that you would verify. Honestly, I think that the majority of these requests probably are not going to be obvious to the extent that, a manager will just know that someone needs a full-time caregiver to live with them. Most of the time you would probably verify. So when asking questions, and I've said this on other episodes as well, I do think it's important that you have either a special form or customize your typical verification form to ask some specific questions regarding, live-in aid requests. On my website, on my firm's website, fairhousingfirm.com, I do have one of these forms that is available, that is already customized with some of these questions on it. But what I would recommend asking in these requests are, things like, does this tenant have a need for a full-time caregiver to be available, 24/7 to them? How many hours per day does this person, need care? What type of services are involved in, this person's necessary care? And all those questions are necessary in order for you to figure out if someone needs to live there in order to provide these services. Because lots of people need care or would benefit from care, but a lot of times, someone coming in once a day or someone coming in several times a week would be sufficient. And so having a live-in aid kind of takes it to a whole nother level of care, and asking those kind of directed questions allows you to get to whether that person really does need this extra level of care. You can inquire into whether this person needs these services on a permanent basis or, an extended long-term basis. That's another relevant point as to whether someone needs to move in order to provide those services.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Lots of things to think about, and appreciate you referencing what's on fairhousingfirm.com for our audience. So we'll make sure we put a link to that live-in aid request template that you have, that form that you have, so our audience can take advantage of that. So yeah, thank you for that. We appreciate you answering that question. So that kind of leads us into an interesting scenario, and I look forward to your comments on this. So our scenario for today is an older female tenant who requests a live-in aide who is her daughter and wants to transfer to a larger apartment. So let's take a look at the scenario, and then we'll jump back in here and get your comments on it.
I was wondering if you have a 2-bedroom apartment available starting next month.
Sure, I can look into that for you, Mrs. Pringle. Do you have someone moving in with you?
Yes, my doctor says I shouldn't be living alone anymore, so I will have my daughter move in with me. Do I have to fill out a form for that? She will be acting as my live-in aide.
So that's an interesting scenario. So thank you, Leslie.
So in this,
This is I found it really, really interesting. So looking forward to your comments. Go ahead. Sorry.
So in this scenario, I think there's really two issues at play. The first issue is, whether someone can legitimately request a family member to come be their live-in aide. This is really, really common, and it happens all the time, that someone requests maybe an adult child, even maybe a spouse, to come live with them to be their live-in aide. I know this might set off maybe some alarm bells in managers' heads, Maybe it should, but the law does not prohibit this. Family members can legitimately act as a live-in aide, as long as you are able to determine that that person, wouldn't have been living in that unit otherwise. So in other words, you need to determine that that person is moving in for the sole purpose of providing care to the tenant. If you discover some additional facts that may call that into question, I think there may be a need to do some additional investigation, ask some different questions regarding why that person may actually be moving in. And this is, as I said, this is a really big deal when it comes to federally subsidized properties, because there really shouldn't be anyone living in the unit whose income is not counted unless they absolutely need to be there for a disability-related reason. So that's the first issue. The second issue is, can someone legitimately ask for a larger unit, for an extra bedroom, let's say, because they have a live-in aide? And the answer is yes. That is a legitimate reason to ask to transfer to a larger unit, or maybe a unit with a different layout, in the case of maybe studios versus one bedrooms, because they have a live-in aide. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you would want to go about your process to verify and approve that live-in aide first before approving any request to transfer the person to a larger unit. But those two things could go hand in hand, in a real life scenario. Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm confident that's all the things that we're going through our audience's mind there on, well, what if this situation? What if that situation? And I think this scenario really, really covered a lot of those maybe in some of our minds, maybe questionable requests. We're like, well, what's the really, but it really comes down to what the law is. And we appreciate your explanation of that. So we always look forward to our Fair Housing Fast 5. And Michael was very kind enough to give our guests a little extra time. I think he actually beat the 90 seconds in one of our more recent episodes. So we've gone from 60 to 90 seconds. So are you ready, Leslie?
I think I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Can you require that a medical doctor verify a tenant's need for a live-in aide?
Yes, a request for a live-in aide is one of the only types of reasonable accommodation requests that you can actually require a doctor sign off.
Perfect. What can you do if the need for a live-in aide appears to have changed?
I think if the need appears to have changed, you should address that question with the tenant first and possibly re-verify the need for the live-in aide.
Can a family member be a live-in aide?
Yes, any type of family member can be a live-in aide as long as they are only living there to provide care for the tenant.
Do you need to verify the need for a larger unit due to a live-in aide?
No, I don't think that would be something that you would need to verify. Really, if a live-in aide has been approved, you should, approve the request for a transfer to a larger unit if they need it.
Can you screen a live-in aide for landlord history?
Absolutely, and I would. You can go beyond just criminal history, and I think someone's landlord history is absolutely relevant to what kind of occupant they're going to be at your property.
Very good. So close, Leslie, so close. So it was 1:37, so just a little bit over, 7 seconds over. So sorry,
Yeah,
you don't get. Yeah. You don't get the 1 quintillion grand prize for, but very good. Nice summary. I love these fast five questions. It really just gives our audience a nice review of what you've been taught today. And we thank you, Leslie, for being on the show. So be sure to check her out at fairhousingfirm.com. She's a national speaker, and she also has all kinds of policy and form templates available. But like I said earlier, we will definitely have a link to the one that she referenced for live-in aides. It'll be in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And we thank all of you for tuning into our show, episode 58. It's amazing how many we've put together so far, and we've been able to continue because of your support. So if you find this show valuable, this education session valuable, please share it with your network. Give us those thumbs up, and we would love to have your feedback. And keep in mind that we have on a regular basis our community questions that we enter into a drawing for all those questions that come in. So if you have any questions on this episode, make sure you make your comments on our YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.